A few years ago, I wrote a book called Life on Life's Terms: The Remarkable Secrets of People of the Moment. This was a book that I had intended for those in recovery because that's where the concept comes from. So I sent it to the people at Hazelden. They publish most of the important works about recovery, thinking that they would, jump at it, but no, they decided they didn't want to have anything to do with it. So it just sits there because honestly, I'm not a good salesman and I have problems promoting myself. So the constant rejections, the reaching out to publisher after publisher just isn't something that I'm very good at. And I admit it. So I have three books that sit here unpublished. But this one is very, very important, not only to those in recovery, but to everybody. I can remember many an AA meeting. I've got 25 years of sobriety in AA, and I can remember meetings where we would talk about whether the big book and the concepts presented in the big book would be helpful to all humanity. And the answer, of course, is yes. But it takes something like the problems created by addiction to bring people to the concept of living life on life's terms. But it's essential for all of us. So let's start with one of the modern day prophets, C.S. Lewis. Remember, I've told you that the prophets come from within the artistic community. And it's amazing how many people don't consider writing an art, but it is very definitely an art. You start with nothing and you end with something. That's what art really is. So the artists are where the prophets come from, and C.S. Lewis was most certainly a prophet. He wrote a book called The Screwtape Letters, which is essentially conversations between two demons named Screwtape and Wormwood. Screwtape is a head demon, and Wormwood is just learning. So these letters back and forth between them are very, very insightful. When he was asked to write more about this, he said that he couldn't because it required him going to such a dark place that it was just something that he would rather not. But here are a couple of lines from that book that you really need to hear. He wrote, "The present is the point at which time touches eternity." And so this idea of trying to get to the present and remain in the present is essential for healthy human beings. But we reject all of that because we're far more interested in what we can gather and gain for ourselves. The paradox of prosperity is that discontent increases with opportunities for acting on it. So the idea that we should be prosperous comes with a heavy load because discontent also increases because we have the ability to do something about it. And, that is problematic for those who want to live in the present. Because, the world, or the life, if you will, that we are all interested in is what I call life under the sun. It has limits, and we don't think it has limits because we think it's all we've got. So everything that we believe and practice and the way we behave is essentially self-centered. And I'm okay with that, as long as you recognize it, because when we make decisions based on self rather than others, we fall into this trap that we find in life under the sun. C.S. Lewis also wrote that the future of all things is the least like eternity. It is the most temporal part of time, for the past is frozen and no longer flows, and the present is all lit up with eternal rays. And, this has been bastardized, if you will, by the Christian nationalist movement. Actually, the whole thing that began in 1980 with the election of Ronald Reagan has turned out to be a con. It's an absolute sham. And here's one of the things I want to tell you about that Kenneth Copeland and Gloria Copeland are high priests of the Christian nationalism. Gloria wrote a pamphlet years back in which she described essentially what I talk about when I'm saying life under the sun. Life on life's terms. So these people know that the kingdom of heaven is in us and among us. They know that this kingdom has unlimited power because it exists in the present. And so while they do a wonderful job in teaching that, it's mixed in with the word dominion. And dominion is one of those words that I try to avoid because it is an absolute. And so the entire movement of Christian nationalism is loosely based on the idea that humankind is supposed to have dominion over the earth and all that lives within the confines of time and distance. They furthermore argue that Jesus died to give us dominion via the world of the Holy Spirit. That, my friends, is a terrific heresy, because that's as far away from the truth as it could possibly be. And this is how they get fooled into thinking that prosperity is their friend, that prosperity is given to them by God. No, prosperity is a term that is used for life under the sun. And the preacher said, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. That's what you get in the world of life under the sun, because you exist within the framework of time and distance. But when you're living life on life's terms, you can avoid all of that. And I want to read to you a paragraph, a very famous paragraph from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is written by a fellow, an early recovery guy named Dr. Paul O. And the Big Book, you understand, the first 164 pages of the Big Book is all about how to recover. The last half, and it's actually more than half of the Big Book, is stories told by people who had recovered. Modern stories, contemporary stories are mixed in with stories from people from the very beginning of AA. And Dr. Paul O. has written a story that is currently titled Acceptance is the Answer. And here's the famous paragraph, and I want you to pay very close attention, because he's describing, and I think it may even be the original idea of living life on life's terms. And here's how Dr. Paul O. describes it. And acceptance is the answer to all my problems. The word all is italicized. And here's the thing, whenever you read anything that has an effect used on one of the words, you need to pay attention to it. It's highlighted by the author, not the editor or the publisher. So the author, Dr. Paul O. writes, and acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me. And I can find no serenity until I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it is supposed to be. Nothing, absolutely nothing, happens in God's world by mistake. Until I could accept my alcoholism, I could not stay sober. Unless I accept life completely on life's terms, I cannot be happy. I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world as on what needs to be changed in me and my attitudes. So that is living life on life's terms. And, one of the things that I tell people that I teach in this book is that you must make peace with your roots in order to live life on life's terms, because your roots, your history, tend to influence you much more than you think. So if you can make peace with all of that, and I mean, the recovery provides a method called amends, to do that. So you need to make amends with your history, your roots. Where did you come from? Because that influences the way you think and live. So make peace with everything. If you had a reprobate father, for example, make peace with that. It's okay. Because it's okay in the world in which you live, which is living life on life's terms. Simply put, a lot of us do live certain things on life's terms. For example, if you've got a tornado that's bearing down on you, it's a good idea to seek safety. If you go out into a snowstorm in the dead of winter, naked, life is going to tell you to get the hell back inside. So we do tend to, absorb these things into our thinking, but not to the extent that I'm talking about. Because when you live in the moment, you're safe from everything else. We used to say in recovery that never let anything beyond your nose disturb you, because it can't actually. You are safe in the moment. And let me tell you, as someone who has practiced this and tries the best he can to practice it, it is a place where you really want to be. But be careful, because it'll change your outlook on everything. And that's why it is so important for us to understand and live as best we can. Of course, this is a very complicated topic, and I'm just a regular human being. That's why I say I could always be wrong, because after all, I'm just a commentary.